The Varaxian battle fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 200 warships appeared in the darkness of space, their hulls gleaming with metal that had conquered 47 worlds. Commander Vextra stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the blue planet on his view screen. He smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Another primitive world," he said to his officers. "This will take less than a day." The Varaxians had been watching Earth for 3 years. They saw humans building their first space stations and launching their early exploration ships. To the Varaxians, humans looked weak and unprepared. Their technology seemed simple and crude. Their weapons were basic. This would be an easy conquest, just like all the others before it. Dextra ordered his communication officer to send the standard message. It was always the same message, translated into the local language: surrender immediately, or face complete destruction. Join the Varaxian Empire, or die. The message had worked on every species they encountered. Fear was a powerful weapon, and the Varaxians knew how to use it well. On Earth, in the United Defense Headquarters in Seoul, Captain G1 received the alien transmission. She sat in her chair, reading the thread on her screen. Her face remained calm. Around her, dozens of officers and technicians worked at their stations, monitoring the approaching fleet. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of computers and the whisper of air conditioning. G1 had expected this day for 5 years. When Earth made first contact with peaceful alien traders, humanity learned an important lesson. The galaxy was not empty, and not everyone in it was friendly. The traders warned them about aggressive empires that hunted for weak species to conquer. They shared stories about the Varaxians and their terrible reputation. Unlike other species who panicked or ignored the warnings, humanity did something different. They prepared. Every nation on Earth contributed resources and knowledge. Scientists shared research across all borders. Military forces trained together. Engineers designed new weapons. The entire planet worked as one for the first time in human history. "Send them a reply," Juan said to her communication officer. She kept her voice steady and professional. "Thank them for the warning and ask them to please wait while we prepare our response." The young officer at the communication station looked surprised, but followed her orders. He typed the message and sent it toward the Varaxian fleet. G1 allowed herself a small smile. She knew exactly how the Varaxians would interpret her polite message. They would think humanity was scared and stalling for time. They would become overconfident. That was exactly what she wanted. Lieutenant Hyan Wu walked over to G1's station. He was her tactical officer, a brilliant young man who could see patterns in battle data that others missed. He had graduated at the top of his class from the new United Earth Military Academy. His specialty was studying alien warfare tactics and finding their weaknesses. "They're positioning themselves exactly like we predicted," Hyan Wu said quietly. "Standard Varaxian formation. Heavy cruisers in front, support ships in the middle, command vessels in the rear. They've used this same pattern in their last 15 invasions," Gujuan replied. "How long until they reach orbital strike range?" 47 hours at their current speed. They're moving slowly to intimidate us. They want us to see them coming and feel helpless." Giwan nodded. The Varaxians relied heavily on psychological warfare. They wanted their enemies to surrender without fighting because it saved resources and time. A terrified population was easier to control than one that had to be defeated in battle. The Varaxians had turned fear into an art form. Dr. Daoyun entered the command center, carrying a data tablet. She was Earth's leading physicist and the head of the defensive weapons program. She looked tired. For the past 3 years she had worked 18-hour days developing the technology that might save Earth. Dark circles showed under her eyes, but her expression was determined. "The satellites are ready," Daoyun reported. "All 6,000 platforms are in position and fully charged. The gravitational systems are operating within normal parameters. The drone swarms are loaded and waiting for your command." "And the holographic projections?" G1 asked. "Perfect. They'll never know which targets are real until it's too late." Daoyun allowed herself a tired smile. "We've tested everything 100 times. It should work." Should Hyan Wu raised an eyebrow, while Daoyun corrected herself. "It will work," The physics is solid. The engineering is sound. We've prepared for every scenario we could imagine. G1 stood up from her chair and walked to the large window that showed Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from this height. Blue oceans covered most of the surface. White clouds drifted across continents. Lights from cities glowed on the night side. Billions of people lived down there, unaware of the danger approaching them. They trusted their defenders to keep them safe. She thought about her family in Busan, her mother who taught elementary school, her father who owned a small restaurant, her younger brother who was studying medicine. They were ordinary people living ordinary lives. They deserved to keep living those lives. Everyone on Earth deserved that chance. Send activation codes to all defense platforms, G1 ordered. Bring all systems online but keep them in stealth mode. Want every weapon ready but invisible. Alert all pilots to prepare for launch. Contact the lunar base and tell them to stand ready with the reserve forces. Her officers moved quickly to follow her commands. Across Earth's orbital space, hidden defense platforms powered up their systems. Thousands of holographic projectors activated, creating fake targets that looked exactly like real satellites and space stations. The real weapons stayed hidden, waiting silently in the darkness. On his flagship, Commander Vextra received the human reply. He read it and laughed loudly. His officers joined in the laughter. Humans were asking them to wait. How adorable. How pathetic. They were probably evacuating their leaders and preparing to surrender. This would indeed be the easiest conquest yet. Inform the fleet, Vextra announced. We give them 48 hours to prepare their surrender, then we begin the attack. Any resistance will be crushed immediately. This primitive species needs to learn what happens when they encounter the Varaxian Empire. His officers cheered and returned to their duties. None of them noticed the small anomalies on their sensor screens. Tiny distortions in space that might have been sensor errors or cosmic background radiation. The Varaxian computers dismissed them as unimportant. After all, what could primitive humans possibly hide from their advanced scanners? Gi-wan watched the Varaxian fleet on her display. They were moving into position exactly as predicted. Everything was going according to plan. She took a deep breath and allowed herself to feel a moment of hope. Humanity had surprised the galaxy before by achieving space travel faster than expected. Tomorrow, they would surprise the Varaxians in a very different way. The next 48 hours would change everything. The 48 hours passed slowly for everyone watching. On Earth, people gathered in their homes and public spaces, looking at screens showing the approaching alien fleet.
Nice.
Some prayed. Some cried. Some stood silent with determination in their eyes, but nobody panicked. The planetary government had prepared the population for this possibility. Everyone knew that humanity had built defenses. They trusted their protectors. Commander Vextra counted down the final minutes with satisfaction. His fleet was in perfect position. Every weapon was charged and ready. His targeting computers had locked onto every human structure in orbit. In moments, Earth's space infrastructure would become debris, and the helpless planet below would surrender, and another world would fall to Varaxian control. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Weapons are hot. Shields at maximum. We await your command. Dextra stood tall on his bridge, enjoying this moment. This was why he loved conquest. The power, certainty of victory.
Oh.
The knowledge that entire civilizations bent to his will. He raised his hand dramatically, then dropped it sharply. Fire everything, he commanded. The Varaxian fleet unleashed their opening strike. Plasma weapons discharged across the formation. Energy beams lanced through space toward their targets. Missiles streaked forward on trails of burning fuel. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. It had never failed to devastate an enemy's orbital defenses before. But something impossible happened. The human satellites didn't explode. Instead, they flickered like images on a broken screen, then disappeared completely. The Varaxian weapons passed through empty space where their targets should have been. A few shots hit debris and destroyed worthless junk. Most of the attacks struck nothing at all. Dextra stared at his view screen in confusion. What happened? Where are their satellites? Before anyone could answer, Space around the Vracian fleet came alive. Hundreds of new contacts appeared on sensors. Real defense platforms decloaked, dropping their stealth fields to reveal weapons that had been hiding in plain sight. They had been there all along, disguised as space debris or masked by clever technology the Varaxians didn't understand. In the Sol Command Center, Captain G1 watched the Vracian confusion with cold satisfaction. Lieutenant Hyanwu, activate the reflector fields. Yes, Captain. Activating now. The defense platforms didn't fire conventional weapons at the Vraxian ships. Instead, they generated invisible fields of gravitational distortion. These fields bent space itself, creating lenses that redirected energy. When the Varaxians fired their next volley, expecting to destroy the real targets this time, something shocking occurred. Their own weapons turned around. Plasma beams curved back toward the ships that fired them. Missiles changed course in mid-flight, chasing their creators. Energy blasts reflected off the gravitational fields and struck Varaxian vessels from unexpected angles. The attack fleet found itself shooting at its own ships. Explosions blossomed across the Vracian formation. Shields flickered and failed under hits from their own weapons. 3 cruisers suffered critical damage immediately. 5 more reported systems failures. Alarms screamed throughout the fleet as crews rushed to understand what was happening.
House.
Ceasefire. Ceasefire, Thisra shouted. His own weapons were being turned against him. This was impossible. No species had ever developed technology like this. The Varaxians had faced many enemies, but none who could weaponize physics itself. Dr. Dayun monitored the defense systems from her station. Everything was working exactly as designed. The gravitational lensing technology had taken 3 years to develop and test. It was based on studying natural phenomena like black holes and neutron stars. Humanity learned how gravity bent light and energy, then figured out how to create the same effect artificially. Other species thought it was theoretical science fiction. Humans made it real. Phase 2 is ready, Dayun reported to G1. Drone swarms are launching now. From hidden bays across Earth's orbital defenses, thousands of small spherical drones deployed. Each drone was roughly the size of a basketball, painted matte black to blend with space. They moved with compressed gas thrusters, making no heat signature that enemy sensors could easily detect. The Varaxians saw them on sensors, but dismissed them as insignificant threats. What are those tiny things? Thetzer demanded. Some kind of sensor probes? Unknown, Commander, his sensor officer replied. They're too small to carry meaningful weapons. They don't read as warheads. They appear to be observation drones. Thexra watched the small spheres spread throughout his fleet formation. Ignore them. Focus on the real threats. All ships, target those defense platforms. Concentrated fire. Burn through whatever tricks they're using. But the drones weren't observation devices. As they reached their designated positions throughout the Varaxian fleet, they activated their specialized payloads. Each drone contained a miniature electromagnetic pulse generator, tuned specifically to the frequency of Varaxian shield technology. The traders who warned humanity about the Varaxians had also shared technical data about their equipment. Human engineers studied that data carefully. 6,000 drones pulsed simultaneously. The electromagnetic wave they created was precisely calibrated. It didn't damage ships or harm crews. It did something more surgical and more devastating. It shut down shield generators across the entire Varaxian fleet. Defensive screens that had protected Varaxian ships for 3 centuries flickered blue, then purple, then disappeared completely. Dozens of capital ships suddenly found themselves naked in hostile space, their primary defense gone. Warning sirens blared throughout the fleet as engineers scrambled to restart the generators. But the human EMP had fried specific components that would take hours to repair. Lieutenant Hyanwu updated his tactical display with real-time damage assessment. Enemy shields are down across 40% of their fleet. The remaining 60% are experiencing fluctuations and power drains. They're vulnerable, Captain. G1 could have ordered a devastating attack right then. Earth's weapons could destroy many helpless Varaxian ships before they recovered. But she hesitated. This wasn't about revenge or conquest. This was about defense and sending a message. She wanted to give the Varaxians a choice, to open a channel to their command ship, Juwan ordered. Her face appeared on the Cess's view screen. The Varaxian commander stared at this human female who had just systematically dismantled his fleet's defenses. She looked calm and professional, showing no anger or fear. Her voice was steady when she spoke. Commander Extra, I am Captain G1 of Earth Defense. Your invasion has failed. Your shields are down. Your weapons are ineffective against our defenses. We have demonstrated that we can protect ourselves. She paused, letting her words sink in. I'm offering you one chance to withdraw peacefully. Take your fleet and leave our system. No more of your people need to die today. Ixra felt rage burning in his chest. This primitive human was offering him mercy, as if he needed it, as if his mighty fleet couldn't still crush this pathetic planet. He had hundreds of ships. So what if they lost shields temporarily? They still had armor, weapons, and numbers. The Varaxian Empire never retreated, never surrendered, never showed weakness. You think your tricks make you strong? Dextra snarled at the screen. You've merely made me angry. I came here planning to accept your peaceful surrender. Now I will grind your world to dust. Every city will burn. Every human will serve as a slave. You had a chance for mercy, and you wasted it. G1's expression didn't change. She had expected this response. The intelligence report said Varaxian commanders were arrogant and prideful. They couldn't accept defeat, even when it stared them in the face. She nodded slowly. I gave you a choice, she said quietly. Remember that. She closed the channel. Dextra was already shouting orders to his fleet. All ships full attack. Shields or no shields, we outnumber them 10-1. Rush their positions. Overwhelm their defenses. Show these humans what happens when they challenge the Varaxian Empire. The massive fleet began moving forward, accelerating toward Earth. 200 warships that had conquered nearly 50 worlds now charged at the small blue planet that dared to resist them. This Ru was certain that weight of numbers would prevail. He had been winning battles for 30 years. Some clever tricks wouldn't stop him, but Captain G1 had more surprises waiting. Humanity hadn't spent 5 years preparing just 2 defensive measures. They had built contingencies upon contingencies. They had studied every Varaxian battle they could find records of. They had wargamed 1,000 scenarios. Earth's defenders were ready for exactly this response. They're committing everything, Hanwu observed. Just as we predicted. Then let's show them what desperation really looks like, G1 replied. Alert all fighter squadrons. Launch the swarm. The hangar bays across Earth's orbital defenses opened simultaneously. Hundreds of small fighter craft launched into space, their engines burning bright against the darkness. Each fighter carried a single pilot and enough weapons to threaten ships much larger than themselves. They were fast, maneuverable, and piloted by volunteers who knew exactly what they were fighting for. Subin sat in her cockpit, feeling the familiar pressure of acceleration as her fighter shot away from the launch platform. She was 24 years old, former civilian pilot who flew passenger shuttles between Earth and the Moon. When the Defense Forces called for volunteers, she signed up immediately. Her instructors said she was naturally gifted at combat flying. She moved her craft like it was an extension of her own body. All fighters, this is Flight Leader Jamin. Her radio crackled. Stay loose. Stay unpredictable. Remember your training. Don't fly like the computer expects. Fly like you're crazy. Subin smiled inside her helmet. That was the key to humanity's fighter tactics. The Varaxians used sophisticated targeting computers that predicted enemy movement based on logic and efficiency. They expected opponents to fly in optimal patterns that conserved fuel and maintained formation. Human pilots did the opposite. They flew wild. Random patterns that wasted energy but confused enemy computers completely. The fighter swarm reached the Varaxian fleet and immediately scattered in all directions. There was no formation, no organization that alien sensors could detect. Each pilot flew their own chaotic path, making random acceleration changes. spinning their craft unnecessarily, burning fuel in sudden bursts that served no logical purpose. To the Varaxians, it looked like panic. To the human pilots, it was controlled chaos. Commander Thexra watched the approaching human fighters with contempt. They fly like drunk insects. Their formation is non-existent. Our point defense will destroy them easily. But when the Varaxian automated weapons tried to lock onto the human fighters, something strange happened. The targeting computers couldn't get solid locks. They predicted where a fighter should be in the next second, aimed at that point, and fired. But the human craft wasn't there anymore. It had randomly accelerated in an unexpected direction. The prediction algorithms failed repeatedly because the humans weren't flying efficiently. They were flying creatively. Subin dove her fighter through a gap between two Varaxian cruisers, spinning her craft as she went. Enemy weapons tracked her but couldn't quite catch her movement. She fired a missile at a sensor array she had been briefed about, a vulnerable point that Dr. Dayun's analysis team had identified. The missile struck home. The explosion was small, but critical. That cruiser's targeting sensors went dark. Across the battlefield, dozens of human fighters executed similar strikes. They didn't try to destroy the massive Varaxian ships. That would take weapons Earth didn't have. Instead, they targeted specific systems: communications arrays, sensor clusters, weapon mounts, engine cooling vents, all the vulnerable spots that careful analysis had revealed. Lieutenant Hanwoo coordinated the attack from his tactical station. His screens showed the entire battle in real time. He watched the data streams and called out priority targets to the fighter squadrons. His analysis of Varaxian tactics told him exactly where to hit them to cause maximum disruption. Gold Squadron, focus on the command ship's communication towers. Blue Squadron, those cruisers on the left flank are trying to regroup. Break them up. Red Squadron, well done on those sensor arrays. Keep it up. The Varaxians began to realize they were in a real fight. These weren't helpless prey. These were dangerous opponents who had studied Varaxian weaknesses carefully and knew how to exploit them. Ship after ship reported systems failures. Commanders couldn't communicate with their fleet. Gunners couldn't target enemies. Sensors showed confusing data or nothing at all. But the Varaxians still had one major advantage: numbers. For every system the humans damaged, there were 5 more ships in reserve. The Sura reorganized his fleet, pulling back damaged vessels and pushing fresh ones forward. He ordered his ships to use manual targeting instead of computers. Varaxian gunners might not be as accurate, but they could still fill space with enough weapons fire to hit something eventually. Captain G1 saw the Varaxians adapting. They were learning, getting smarter. Good commanders did that. She needed to shift tactics before they figured out an effective counter. Hyenwoo, they're going to switch to saturation fire soon. Wide pattern shooting to hit our fighters regardless of their movement. I see it too, Captain. We need to change the dynamic of this engagement. Agreed. Activate the gravity wells. Full power. Deep in the outer solar system, far beyond the battle near Earth, a network of satellites suddenly powered up. These were massive devices, each one the size of a small building. They had been built in secret over 3 years, assembled in the empty darkness where no one would notice them. Each satellite contained technology that most species believed was impossible: artificial gravity generators powerful enough to affect objects. Millions of kilometers away, Dr. Dayun had spent 2 years just on the theoretical physics. Another year building prototypes. The final devices used more power than most small countries, drawing energy from solar collectors spread across a huge area. The concept was simple, but the engineering was incredibly difficult. Create focused gravity wells that could pull ships off course without creating permanent gravitational distortions. Make artificial gravity that could be turned on and off like a light switch. When the satellites activated, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Varaxian ships suddenly experienced pull forces from random directions. A cruiser trying to turn left found itself yanked right by invisible hands. A destroyer attempting to retreat got dragged forward instead. The entire fleet found itself scattered like leaves in a storm. Dexra felt his flagship shudder as something grabbed it. His inertial compensators struggled to adjust. Alarms warned that the ship was off course. His navigation officer reported impossible readings. "Commander, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the operational area. Multiple sources, moving patterns, strength fluctuating. Our course corrections aren't working properly. The gravity is pulling us in different directions." "That's impossible," Dexter shouted, though he was beginning to realize that word didn't mean much when fighting humans. Gravity doesn't just appear and disappear. It doesn't move around. But it did now. Earth's scientists had weaponized one of the fundamental forces of the universe. The Varaxian fleet, designed to fight in normal space with predictable physics, couldn't cope with battle space where gravity itself became a weapon. Ships collided with each other as they were pulled into unexpected trajectories. Tight formations broke apart. The organized military force became a confused mass of vessels, trying desperately to regain control. Subin and her fellow pilots used the chaos perfectly. They had been briefed on where the gravity wells would appear. Human fighters avoided those areas while leading Vraxian ships directly into them. A pursuing enemy cruiser would suddenly get grabbed by artificial gravity and yanked away from its target. The hunters became helpless, spinning in space, while human weapons found their vulnerable points. "This is incredible," Subin shouted over her radio as she watched a Vraxian destroyer get pulled completely sideways, exposing its entire unshielded underside to human missiles. "They can't even fly straight." But excitement was dangerous. Subin learned that lesson hard when a Varaxian weapons officer got lucky. A plasma bolt, fired without computer assistance, caught her fighter's wing. The impact wasn't direct, but it was enough. Her craft spun violently. Warning lights flooded her cockpit. Her engine was damaged. Life support was failing. "Gold 7 is hit." She transmitted, "Engine failure. I'm losing attitude control. Gold 7, this is command." Lieutenant Hyanwoo's voice came through clearly. "We have your position. Rescue shuttle is launching now. Hold on." Subin fought to stabilize her tumbling craft. She was a good pilot, even in a dying ship. She managed to stop the spin and point her nose toward Earth. If she was going down, she'd at least fall toward home. Her radio crackled with voices of her squadron mates, offering encouragement and covering her damaged fighter from further attacks. "Commander." Dextra watched his tactical display with growing horror. His fleet was being systematically disabled by an enemy that should have been helpless. Human technology that shouldn't exist. Tactics that made no sense. Weapons that defied his understanding of physics. This was supposed to be an easy conquest. Instead, it was becoming a disaster. "All ships," he transmitted across the fleet channels, "concentrate fire on the planet itself. If we can't beat their defenses, we'll threaten their home. Prepare orbital bombardment weapons. Target their major cities." It was a desperate move, almost an admission of defeat. But Dexter couldn't accept that he was beaten. If he couldn't conquer Earth, he would at least make them surrender through fear. Surely humans would submit rather than watch their cities burn. He was about to learn that threatening Earth directly was the worst mistake he could possibly make. Captain G1 watched her tactical display as the Varaxian flagship began moving toward Earth. She saw other ships breaking formation to follow. Their weapons were charging for planetary bombardment. The targeting data showed they were preparing to fire on Seoul, Tokyo, New York, and other major cities. Dexa was making his final play, betting that humans would surrender rather than see millions die. "Captain, they're targeting population centers," Lieutenant Hyanwoo said quietly. His voice was controlled, but she could hear the tension underneath. His family lived in Seoul, so did hers. So did millions of people who trusted Earth's defense to protect them. Giwan felt cold anger settle into her chest. She had tried to offer the Varaxians a peaceful way out. She had demonstrated superior defensive technology, hoping they would recognize when they were beaten. Instead, they chose to threaten civilians. That changed everything. "How long until the flagship is in bombardment range?" she asked. 17 minutes at current speed," Hyanwoo replied. "That's more than enough time." Gi-1 opened a channel to Dr. Dayun. Doctor, I need full power to the gravitational network. Forget about conserving energy. I want everything those satellites can give us. Dayun's face appeared on her screen. The physicist looked exhausted but determined. Captain, if we run them at maximum power, we risk burning out the generators. They weren't designed for sustained operation at that level. I understand. Do it anyway. We're not going to get a second chance at this, yes, Captain. Bringing all satellites to maximum output now? In the outer solar system, the hidden network of gravity generators surged with power. Solar collectors across millions of square kilometers fed energy into the massive devices. The satellites began creating gravitational distortions far stronger than before. Space itself bent and twisted around the Vracian fleet. The Xres flagship suddenly jerked violently to the side. The inertial dampeners couldn't compensate fast enough. Crew members fell from their stations. Equipment broke loose from mountings. The entire ship groaned with stress as artificial gravity tried to tear it apart. What's happening? Dextra shouted, pulling himself back to his command chair. Gravitational forces increasing exponentially. His science officer screamed over the alarms. The humans are creating gravity wells strong enough to affect our trajectory significantly. We're being pulled off course. The flagship wasn't alone. Across the Varaxian fleet, every ship experienced similar forces. But the humans weren't just creating random gravity wells anymore. Lieutenant Hyanwu was coordinating them with surgical precision. He was hurting the Varaxian ships, pushing them exactly where he wanted them to go. The gravity fields acted like invisible hands. Grabbing ships and flinging them away from Earth, the Varaxian vessels that had been moving toward the planet suddenly found themselves moving away from it instead. Their engines fired at full power, trying to compensate, but they couldn't overcome the gravitational forces acting on them. Thixra watched helplessly as his flagship was dragged backward, away from his target. His weapons were charged and ready to fire, but Earth was moving out of range. The targeting computers couldn't get locks on the planet because his ship kept accelerating in the wrong direction. Override the navigation systems. He ordered, manual control. Point us at the planet and fire anyway. But it was too late for that tactic. Hyanwu had positioned the Varaxian fleet exactly where he wanted them. The ships were scattered, disorganized, and most importantly, they were all in perfect positions for what came next. Captain, enemy fleet is in optimal attack formation, Hyanwu reported. Our formation, not theirs. We have clear firing solutions on every vessel. Juan took a deep breath. What she was about to order would result in Varaxian deaths. Up until now, the battle had been primarily defensive, focused on disabling rather than destroying. But the Varaxians had chosen to target Earth's cities. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. All defense platforms, you are authorized to use lethal force. Target enemy ships. Weapons free. Across Earth's orbital defenses, weapons that had remained quiet suddenly opened fire. These weren't the gravity lenses that reflected enemy attacks. These were humanity's own offensive weapons, hidden until this moment. Railguns that accelerated metal projectiles to incredible speeds. Particle beams that could cut through ship armor. Missile batteries loaded with warheads that Dr. Dayun had designed specifically to defeat Vraxian defensive. Technology. The first impacts caught the Vraxians completely by surprise. They had been so focused on trying to reach Earth that they didn't expect the defensive stations to mount an offensive. A railgun projectile moving at a significant fraction of light speed punched straight through a cruiser's hull. The kinetic energy of the impact created an explosion that tore the ship in half. Sue Dashbin, her fighter now safely recovered by a rescue shuttle, watched from the observation deck as Earth's defenses unleashed their full power. She saw human weapons, built with technology shared by friendly aliens and improved by human engineering, strike at the fleet that came to conquer her home. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The human fighters, having pulled back to safe distance, now had a new mission. Lieutenant Hyanwu transmitted targeting data directly to their systems. Human pilots became forward observers, marking priority targets and assessing damage. They painted targets with laser designators, guiding missiles from the defense platforms to the most critical enemy ships. Commander's flagship shuddered as multiple impacts hit its hull. The ship's armor was strong, designed to withstand tremendous punishment, but it wasn't invincible. Especially not when human weapons kept striking the same points repeatedly, wearing through the protection layer by layer. Vexra demanded. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. We've lost main power to weapons. Secondary systems are failing. Life support is compromised in multiple sections. Around his flagship, other Varaxian ships suffered similar fates. Destroyers broke apart under sustained fire. Cruisers listed helplessly with their engines destroyed. Support vessels exploded when their fuel reserves were hit. The mighty fleet that had conquered 47 worlds was being torn apart by the world they thought would be their 48th victim, but the humans weren't targeting every ship equally. Haiyan-Wu was selective, focusing fire on vessels that posed the greatest threat or showed the most resistance. Ships that powered down their weapons and stopped advancing were left alone. This wasn't mindless destruction. This was measured force with a purpose. Vexra finally understood. He was beaten. Completely, utterly defeated. His fleet was scattered and broken. His ships were being destroyed one by one. Earth's defenses hadn't even been scratched. He had lost this battle in every possible way. Pride had brought him to this moment, and now pride would cost him everything. A massive explosion rocked his flagship. The main reactor was destabilizing. His engineering officer reported they had minutes before complete failure. The ship was dying around him. His crew was dying. Everything he had built his career on was crumbling to nothing. Captain G1's face appeared on his view screen again. She looked different now. Not angry, but sad. As if she regretted what had happened, even though she was winning. "Commander Vexra," she said quietly, "order your fleet to cease fire and power down weapons. I'm offering rescue to all Varaxian survivors. Your wounded will receive medical treatment. Your healthy crew will be treated as prisoners of war according to interstellar conventions." Vexra stared at her. This human was offering him mercy again. After he threatened her cities? After he refused her first offer of peace? Why would she do that? The Varaxian way was to destroy defeated enemies completely. Show no weakness. Take no prisoners unless they were useful slaves. But humans apparently fought differently. They defended themselves fiercely but didn't pursue vengeance. They could destroy his entire fleet right now, but they were offering rescue instead. It made no sense to his Varaxian mind. Yet he couldn't deny that her way had proven superior. She had won the battle completely while he had lost everything. His flagship shook with another explosion. Systems were failing throughout the ship. He could feel the deck tilting beneath his feet as gravity control gave out. His crew looked at him with desperate eyes, waiting for his decision. He had led them here. He had refused the peaceful option. If they died now, it would be his fault entirely. For the first time in 30 years of military service, Commander Vexra admitted defeat. All Varaxian ships, he transmitted across the fleet channels. His voice was heavy with shame, but he forced the words out. "Cease fire. Power down all weapons. Except human rescue operations. This battle is over." Across the scattered remains of his fleet, Varaxian ships went dark. Weapons powered down, engines cut to minimal power. The battle ended not with a final glorious charge, but with quiet surrender. It was the first time a Varaxian conquest fleet had ever been defeated. The first time they had surrendered to an enemy. The first time they learned that sometimes the prey had teeth sharp enough to bite back. "Captain." Guan closed her eyes briefly, feeling relief wash over her. Earth was safe. Humanity had proven it could defend itself. But the cost had been high. She thought about Subin and the other pilots who had been injured. The crew's undamaged defense platforms. The resources spent on this battle that could have been used for peaceful purposes. "Dispatch rescue shuttles to all disabled Varaxian vessels," she ordered. "Medical teams on standby. Treat their wounded exactly as you would treat our own people. Show them what humanity means." The rescue operation took 12 hours. Human shuttles moved through the battlefield, collecting Varaxian survivors from damaged ships. Medical teams worked around the clock treating injured aliens. using knowledge shared by the friendly trader species who had warned Earth about the Varaxians in the first place. Every wounded Varaxian received the same care that human casualties got. No exceptions. Commander Thesera watched from a medical bay on one of Earth's orbital stations. His injuries were minor compared to many of his crew. Broken ribs and a concussion, nothing life-threatening. Human doctors had treated him quickly and professionally, showing no anger or hatred. They simply did their job with quiet efficiency. Through the viewport, he could see his flagship, or what was left of it. The massive vessel was a broken shell now, held together by its structural frame alone. Most of its interior was exposed to space. He had commanded that ship for 8 years. Now it was just another piece of debris orbiting Earth. The door to his medical bay opened. Captain G1 entered, accompanied by 2 guards. She looked tired, but alert. Thexra noticed she wore a sidearm, but her hands were relaxed, not near the weapon. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. Why would she be? He was defeated and helpless. "Commander," she said, nodding respectfully. "How are your injuries?" "I'll survive," Thexra replied. His pride wanted him to be defiant, but he was too exhausted for games. "Your doctors are skilled." "Thank you. They're doing excellent work treating all the casualties." G1 sat in a chair near his bed. Her guards stayed by the door, watching but not threatening. "I need to ask you some questions about the Varaxian Empire, about the worlds you've conquered." "Why should I tell you anything?" "Because the galaxy is changing, Commander. Whether you realize it or not, this battle changed everything. News is already spreading. 47 conquered species now know that the Varaxian Empire can be defeated. What do you think they'll do with that knowledge?" The Sora hadn't considered that. He had been so focused on his personal failure that he hadn't thought about the larger implications. But G1 was right. The Varaxian Empire maintained control through fear and reputation. If that reputation was broken, if conquered species believed they could resist successfully, then everything would fall apart. "Rebellions," he said quietly. "There will be rebellions on every world we control." "Yes, and Earth doesn't want more violence. We don't want revenge. We want peace." Giwan leaned forward slightly. "Help us. Tell us about the conquered worlds. Which ones are most likely to rebel? Which ones will need support? Where are Varaxian forces concentrated? We want to help those species gain their freedom without unnecessary bloodshed." "You want to free our conquered territories?" Dextra was confused. "Why? You could demand they become your territories instead. You defeated us. By galactic law, you have claim to everything we controlled. Earth isn't interested in ruling other species. We just proved we can defend ourselves. That's enough. We want to trade, share knowledge, and cooperate with other species, not control them." It made no sense to Dextra's way of thinking. Every species in the galaxy wanted power and territory. That was how civilization worked. Strong dominated the weak. Yet these humans seemed genuinely different. They had the strength to conquer but chose not to. They had the power to take revenge but offered mercy instead. Over the next several hours, Dexter talked. He told G1 everything she wanted to know. Strategic positions, troop deployments, which worlds had the strongest resistance movements, which Varaxian commanders might be sympathetic to change. He told himself he was doing it to prevent more death. But part of him wondered if he was simply tired of the Empire's way of doing things. Meanwhile, across Earth, people celebrated in the streets. The alien invasion had been defeated. Humanity had proven it belonged among the stars. News broadcasts showed footage of the battle, carefully edited to avoid glorifying violence but clearly demonstrating Earth's defensive capabilities. The message to the galaxy was clear. Earth could be a friend or an enemy, but it could never be a victim. Dr. Dayun worked with her team to assess the gravitational satellites. She predicted. Several generators had burned out from operating at maximum power, but the network had done its job. The technology worked even better than her calculations suggested. With some improvements, they could build more satellites and sell the technology to allied species. Earth's defensive innovations could help other worlds protect themselves too. Lieutenant Hyenwu compiled a detailed battle report. His analysis showed that human tactics had been successful primarily because they were unexpected. The Varaxians studied their enemies and prepared standard responses. Your humanity fought in ways that had no precedent. Creative tactics, improvised solutions, technology that shouldn't exist. The human advantage was unpredictability itself. Subin recovered from her injuries and immediately volunteered for the next fighter squadron. Her near-death experience hadn't scared her away from combat. Instead, it made her more determined. She and her fellow pilots had proven that skill and courage could overcome superior technology. They were already developing new tactics, improving on what worked during the battle. 3 days after the battle, the first message arrived from a conquered world. The species called themselves the Kelri, and they lived on a planet the Varaxians had controlled for 60 years. The message was simple. You defeated the Varaxians. Can you help us do the same? By the end of the week, 17 more messages arrived from different conquered worlds, all asking for help, advice, or technology. The galactic power structure was indeed changing. The Varaxian Empire's grip was loosening, and Earth found itself at the center of a new movement. Ambassador Taeyang, Earth's diplomatic representative, proposed creating a defensive alliance. Not an empire or a military force, but a cooperation agreement between free worlds. Species would maintain their independence but agree to mutual defense. Technology would be shared. Trade would be open. Any member attacked by an aggressive power could call on the others for help. The proposal spread quickly through galactic communication networks. Within a month, 12 species agreed to join the alliance. Within 3 months, 30 species had signed on. The balance of power in the galaxy shifted dramatically. The age of easy conquest was ending. Commander Thexra remained on Earth as a prisoner, but his conditions were comfortable. He had access to books, entertainment, and communication with his crew. Human guards treated him with respect. He spent his time writing a detailed analysis of the battle, examining where the Varaxian Empire had gone wrong, not just tactically, but philosophically. The Varaxians had conquered through fear and force. Never building genuine loyalty or cooperation, they took but never gave. They demanded but never negotiated. It was a system that worked as long as they remained the strongest power in the region. But strength was relative. The galaxy was bigger than the Varaxian Empire realized. 6 months after the battle, Captain Ji-Wan visited Dextra again. She brought news. The Varaxian government has agreed to negotiations. They want to discuss peace terms and the release of conquered territories. They're giving up the Empire? Dextra couldn't believe it. They're adapting to a new reality. The rebellions you predicted have happened. 20 worlds have declared independence. The Varaxian military is stretched too thin to maintain control. They can either accept change peacefully or watch their empire collapse violently. Their leadership chose peace. What will happen to me? It depends on you. The Varaxian government wants you returned for court-martial. They blame you for the failed invasion. But Earth is offering you asylum if you want it. You've been cooperative and helpful. You've provided information that saved lives during the liberation of conquered worlds. Dextra thought about his options. Return home to face punishment for his failure, or stay on Earth among the species he had tried to conquer? Neither option was appealing, but one was clearly better than the other. I'll stay, he decided. Perhaps I can be useful here. I understand Varaxian military thinking. If there are future conflicts, I can help you anticipate their strategies. G1 nodded. We'd appreciate that. But there's something you should know. You'll be working alongside representatives from the species the Varaxians conquered. It's people whose worlds suffered under your empire's rule. Can you accept that? Dextra was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I think I need to. I've spent 30 years serving an empire built on conquest. Maybe it's time I helped build something else, something better. A year after the battle, Earth's defensive alliance included 42 species. The Varaxian Empire had released most of its conquered territories and was slowly transforming into a more cooperative member of the galactic community. It was a painful transformation, and not everyone in Varaxian society accepted it. But change was happening. Captain G1 stood at the same observation window where she had watched the Varaxian fleet arrive. But now, the view was different. Human. Ships moved alongside alien vessels from dozens of species, conducting joint exercises and cooperative missions. Trade ships came and went freely. Diplomatic shuttles carried ambassadors and negotiators working on new agreements. Lieutenant Hyenwu joined her at the window. Hard to believe it's only been a year since the invasion. Time moves fast when... You're changing the galaxy, Jiwan replied with a small smile. Do you think it will last? This alliance? This peace? Honestly, I don't know. There will be challenges. Other aggressive species might test us. Internal conflicts might threaten cooperation, but I think we proved something important. We proved that defense is stronger than conquest. That cooperation beats domination. That's worth fighting for. And if someone else attacks us... Gion's smile grew slightly wider. Then we'll remind them what happened to the Vraxians. We'll show them what humanity does to those who threaten our friends. She paused, then added, We'll show them that attacking Earth or our allies is never going to end the way they expect. Below them, Earth turned peacefully in space. A small blue planet that had survived its first test as a spacefaring civilization. A world that had faced conquest and emerged stronger. A species that proved they belonged among the stars, not through domination, but through determination, creativity, and the courage to defend what they believed in. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity was no longer just another primitive species taking its first steps into space. They were now a power to be respected, an ally to be valued, and an enemy to be avoided. They had earned their place among the stars not through aggression or conquest, but by proving they could protect themselves and others. And if anyone else came looking for an easy conquest, humanity was ready to teach them the same lesson they taught the Vraxians. They were ready to show them that attacking Earth was never, ever going to be as easy as it looked.